Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name's Tony Tornay. I play drums in a band called All Souls and a band called Fatso Jetson from Los Angeles, California.
How would you describe the music of All Souls?
We're a rock and roll band. We all have a bunch of varied and different influences, but you know, we're a rock and roll band that you know, we're a rock and roll band.
A rock and roll band, but one with roots in the noise rock scene. As you mentioned, you're in Fatso Jetson, which is, I think, associated a lot with the stoner rock and desert rock scenes.
Yeah.
And so it's rock and roll, but it also has a lot of post-punk, stoner rock, noise rock kind of elements to it, right?
Yeah. I mean, the description thing's always a little weird these days because, I mean, there's so many subgenres at this point. But, so I just say rock and roll because that just seems simple. But yeah, I mean, we all grew up on early 80s, late 70s, early 80s punk rock, but we also grew up on 70s rock and, like you said, noise rock but, I mean, we also love, bands like The Cars and Devo and, we're kind of all over the place. And we try to distill all of that down into one thing.
So tell people who else is in the band besides you.
The band consists of Antonio Aguilar on guitar and vocals. His wife, Meg Castellanos, plays bass and does some vocals. And Eric Trammell plays guitar.
So people might know Meg and Antonio from the band Totemoshi, which was a kind of noise rock, almost amphetamine reptile style band from Oakland, right?
Yes. Yeah, and Eric played in a band called Black Elk from Portland that was pretty active back in the early 2000s, and before that played in a band called Brothers Collateral in Wadsworth.
So what brought all you guys together, and why did you decide to form All Souls?
Well, for Fatso Jetson, my other band, we are sometimes insanely active for very long stretches of time, but then sometimes we take like a year off, not by design, but just real life gets in the way of things. And sometimes when you're not playing as much as you like to, you start looking around to start something new. And Antonio and I, for years, have been threatening to start a band together. And, we got far enough along that we started kind of writing some songs together and kind of talking about the kind of things that we would like to do. And then back in, I think it was 2017, they both Antonio and Meg approached me with Eric. And they were like, hey, is this something you might want to do? And at the time, Fatso Jetson wasn't really doing anything. So I jumped at the opportunity, and we pretty quickly were able to write an album's worth of material and get it out and, just start hitting the road a lot.
Did you have a pretty good idea of what kind of music you guys wanted to make?
Yeah, we did. The first time that the idea really came together that this was something that we were going to do, we actually sat down as a band and kind of mapped out what we wanted to do, how we wanted to do it, what we wanted it to sound like. All of us have played in bands and toured for 20, 30 years now. And, sometimes you jump into a project and it doesn't work out the way you wanted it to. And, I think a big part of that is about communication. And, the one thing that I've learned in all of the bands that I've played in over the years is that musicians, we aren't necessarily the best communicators when it comes to the ideas that we have and how we'd like to do it. And so that was one of the things that I was kind of adamant about, is that I really wanted to sit down and and make sure everybody, that we all understood and respected each other, and that we were all on the same page, with our intentions. So yeah, so we actually really did take I've been in a lot of bands where you just sort of show up and what happens, whereas we were very we were very clear with what we wanted to do with this band from the get-go.
And what was that exactly? Because you did mention that All Souls has a little bit of a 70s hard rock vibe to it. Was that the major intention?
I mean, it wasn't the intention. It wasn't an intention as much as it was an acknowledgement. That we all, I mean, as much as I love Black Flag, I also love Joe Walsh. And all of those things can exist together, and they should exist together. So we figured, why not make that happen for ourselves?
So, am I understanding you when you say that you guys had mapped out what you wanted to do? Was the intention to mix much more? I mean, I don't want to use the word mainstream, but much more popular influences with kind of your underground and punk rock background?
Well, it wasn't that so much as there, when we sat down and started talking about the ideas of what we wanted to do, it wasn't so much of we literally musically are going to sound like this. It was kind of more the overall idea of what the band should be like and how we might want to operate. And the music thing, I mean, I've known Tony and Meg since, God, my other band, Fatso Jetson, did a tour with this band called Caius back in 1995, and they came to the show in San Francisco. And, so it's like we've all, and Eric's band, Fatso Jetson, had also played a bunch of shows with them. So musically, I knew that we were all very compatible. And that it's just more about common exploration of just like, when you get into something like this, it's good to know where the people are coming from, because you understand that you're all on the same page. But it wasn't a conscious thing of like, hey, let's try to be mainstream but mix in this other stuff. It was more, I like what you guys do already, and I think that we would all operate together well, if that makes sense.
Sure. If you would, like, what would you say the major differences between All Souls and your other bands?
I think that All Souls is a bit more focused. Like when we sit down to write, we really like think that there isn't a lot of whimsical stuff per se. It's like we sit down and we really hash things out, and sometimes writing a song will take a little bit longer than it does in other bands, but it's more because we do something and then we sit with it for a few days, pick it apart, and then try to put it back together again. And whereas a lot of other bands that I've played in over the years, it's a lot more loose, for lack of a better word, where things sometimes, ideas just sort of come up and you go with it. And, I feel like All Souls is a lot more focused in terms of our writing.
So you mentioned that All Souls formed around 2017, and the first album came out not long after that. It sounds like you guys are putting together songs pretty quickly. Tell me a little bit about your songwriting process.
Well, somebody comes in with an idea, and then we all jump on it and we start just tinkering and messing around. And sometimes it might be a guitar riff, sometimes it might be a bass line or a drum beat, sometimes it's just a vocal idea. And we all, one of the things that we wanted from the very beginning of this band was for everybody to be an active participant. And it's not like, oh, this guy is the songwriter or this guy is the whatever. It's really a collaborative effort. So even if somebody comes in with a pretty rough idea of a song, it's not unusual for the whole thing to be picked apart and rearranged, and it's a group effort. It really is a group effort. We rehearse 3 times a week, if not more, and we just it's something we love and we take great pride in. So we do the best that we can to honor that time.
Compared to some of your other bands, collectively your other bands, All Souls seems very vocals driven. There are a lot of vocal hooks and memorable choruses and things like that. Would you say that the vocals and the lyrics are emphasized more with All Souls than some of the other projects you guys have been involved with?
To a degree, yes. I mean, it could go either way. I mean, there are other bands that I've played in. I played in a band with a woman named Linda Perry, who's a record producer and whatever, and that was all about vocals and
Right, right.
things like that. But I've also played in just instrumental bands where there are no vocals at all, and so I mean, we do take great pride in what we've come up with, but it for me it's kind of hard to answer that only because I've been on both ends of the spectrum. So I
Right. I think specifically, I really feel like Fatso Jetson is kind of a guitar rock band. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, oh yeah,
And
for sure.
Black Elk and Totemoshi, as discordant as they feel very riff based,
Yeah.
and I feel like All Souls is kind of almost as what you're talking about the '70s rock influences. It feels more like quote unquote song bands. The vocals are the hook that drives the songs forward.
Yeah, well,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, that's totally true. I mean, Fatso Jetson, we can tend to sometimes be a little bit long-winded, especially when we play live. A lot of that music was written with the idea that at any given moment we could kind of stretch out on parts and Mario is maybe one of my favorite vocalists of all time, but there's a lot of that music that Fatso Jetson does that doesn't have any vocals at all, and with All Souls, I think we did, really want to have the vocals be kind of really something that was in the mix, I mean, and to the point that we've, like the other day at rehearsal, we were working on an idea and we were trying to think of the vocals and Antonio was like, maybe this is an instrumental, because that's something this band hasn't done yet. So, again, we just try to do our best to serve the music. And, I mean, yeah, it is definitely pretty forward though with the vocals and those ideas. I mean, that's something that we take into consideration all the time when writing.